Okay, this is the video that will help guide you through Project 8. Project 8 is not that unlike Project 5. Both involve recording two people in a dialogue. Both involve checkerboarding that dialogue in post-production. The difference is that Project 8 is on camera. Project 5 was simply an audio-only project. So if you want to go to the project page, you can download the instructions, but you probably don't need that since you're watching this video and I'm going to explain what's involved here. You're going to need about the same equipment that you needed for Project 6 and 7, except that as opposed to a boom and a lav, you should probably pick two booms or two lavs or two SM57s, two plant mics if you want to use those. You don't really have to do this with wireless lavs, although it would probably be good practice since when you start making videos where people are moving around on the set, it's easier to do when the microphone actually moves with the actor as opposed to having a plant mic. But for this video, the people could be seated next to one another and talking to each other. If you do decide to go with two boom mics, you may want to actually get stands for those, and you can put boom mics on stands. That's done quite often, especially if the people are not moving. That way you don't have to have people holding these microphones. So again, if you can select a quiet location, that will make post-production much easier. You may not even have to record room tone if you're in a very quiet location because any background noise will be negligible. If you record anyplace else, you probably do need to have room tone if you're going to be cutting between people because, for example, if one person's mic is lower than the other or their voice is lower and you want to bring them up, you'll hear a shift in the background sound. So adding room tone under those people will help make a seamless transition from person to person. And again, I suggest room 248, which is the audio studio. There's no HVAC noise in that room. It's very quiet, seemingly isolated from the other rooms. I've actually not recorded in there, but I poked my head in there when they were pretty much finished with the room, and I was very impressed with the sound of that room. Again, on the DR40, you'll probably want to set that to external independent, even if you're using two identical microphones, just because the two talent may be different in volume. Somebody may be emoting more or talking in a louder voice than somebody else. And I mentioned in the other projects, if you're using the wireless lavs, you don't need the phantom power because the power is actually handled in the transmitter receiver part of that. In other words, the mic has batteries. But if you're using boom mics or any condenser mic, you will need the phantom power, so the switch on the side should be set to mic plus phantom. Otherwise, just microphone is fine. In fact, when you have it set to mic plus phantom, you get a warning message that says, are you sure you want to do this? Because it does drain the batteries a little bit quicker. But for what you're doing for 30 seconds, you should be good in any case. As far as what these people are saying, they can be just having a conversation. You can make it extemporaneous. If you want to have some kind of a script, that's fine. If you want to make it a fake newscast, that's fine. If you want them to read dialogue from some play back and forth, that's fine. Anything they want, they can do. In the past, most of the students have just talked back and forth extemporaneously with no script, and that's fine. As always, check the levels and make sure that you're using as much of the dB full scale as you can. You don't want to overload, but still, I don't think I've ever had an issue where I've gotten an unusable take because a peak happened to hit higher than 0 dB full scale. Generally, if you're getting distortion, it's because somebody's yelling and you're overloading the mic preamp. It's not so much that you're actually exceeding 0 dB full scale. And as always, be sure to record the audio on the camera, and it's so much easier to sync up. And for this particular project, one camera shot is fine. You can do a lockdown shot. You don't have to do any panning or zooming. Just a lockdown shot is fine. So once you're done, then check and make sure you've got good audio and good video before you release your actors. And then take the SD card out of the DR40 and stick it in your SD card slot in your computer, or you can use the USB cable to transfer from the DR40. Go ahead and create an audition session. You can do it at 48, 32, or whatever, but import the file and then do extract channels to mono files because you want to separate the left and right stems so you can deal with them individually. Then bring those two stems out onto the timeline and then go through and checkerboard. And this is a video about checkerboarding. Checkerboarding is a technique used when sound, usually dialogue, is edited for a video production. It works like this. On the first edit, if the dialogue had been mixed in the field, it would be placed on one track. If there were multiple mics recorded, like booms and separate lavs, the dialogue would be placed on as many tracks as needed. On the next video edit, a different single track in the case of mixed dialogue, or a different group of tracks, would be used. The dialogue for the third edit would be back on the same track or tracks as the first edit, and the dialogue for the fourth edit would be on the same track or tracks as the second. The checkerboard pattern created by placing every other edit on a track or group of tracks gives this term the name checkerboarding. Often handles are also present on both the in and out of each dialogue track. Handles are the audio that precedes and follows the audio for that segment. Having the overlapping audio from the handles can also make it possible to adjust the timing of the audio edits, since the video and audio might not always switch at the same time. In addition to the dialogue tracks, checkerboarding can also be done with sound effects and music tracks. So go ahead and checkerboard the audio by deleting the track that's not being used. Just drag through the clip with a time selection tool and then hit delete, and that will delete that section. What that does, that increases the presence by having only the mic on that's closest to the talent. So you don't get any of the bleed going into the other mic or any of the noises that happen. The other person happens to be breathing or happens to clear their throat. You don't really hear that. You just hear the person talking, which is what you want. And this is what they do for major motion pictures. They'll have a body mic on every actor. They'll also have a boom mic as well, but they'll have a body mic on every actor. And only the audio from the actor that's speaking will be used. Once you've done the checkerboarding and you've got it cleaned up, then maybe go through and make sure that the two people sound balanced volume-wise. Because they're on separate tracks, it's very easy just to bring the volume up globally on one person or the other if they happen to be too loud or too soft. Then you might add some high-end EQ, and I typically do that with every dialogue session. I add a little bit of high-end EQ to increase the presence, and you might even want to add some compression. Look at the overall output level, and if you're not really having any peaks that are approaching -6 on the dB full scale meter, you might want to bump up everything a little bit so that occasionally there's a peak that hits -6. You want ideally to have peaks hit between -6 and 0 dB full scale. That way you're using all of the bits. Here's an example of a project that some students did in a previous class.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have Sam with me.
Howdy.
You want to talk audio gear?
Yeah. I've been using my Roland JC120 amp. It's super handy. It's really loud. I like it a lot. It's really clean. Works really good with pedals. Really lets them sing. About you, what have you been using? I heard you're gonna buy a synth.
Maybe, but that's for another day. I'll see you tomorrow on the podcast. Thank you, Sam. Your amp is garbage. Bye.
Now, the video may have started and ended before and after the audio does, but that's fine. When you export this, you can do a time selection. You can do an I where you want the video to start and an O where you want the video to end, just the same way you would in Premiere. And then when you export it, you're going to be exporting it using Adobe Media Encoder, but you can do a time selection there as well, and that will just export that portion of the file. So check and make sure that your final file does have audio and video on it and that you're happy with the file. It's only 30 seconds, so it's not going to kill you to listen to 30 seconds. Then go to the Canvas page, go to the project page in Canvas, click the Submit Assignment button, browse, find that assignment, and upload it. Again, be sure to save your work because there may be an issue with this, or you may actually want to use this for your portfolio if it happens to be something that turned out pretty well. Good luck with the project and email me if you have any issues.